My dear children, we are entering into our seventh chapter, our body, the temple of God. To begin with, we need to understand what exactly Bible says about temple. If you could go back to the city of Jerusalem in Bible times, the biggest thing you would see is the temple. This beautiful building was designed by King David and built by King Solomon, and they believed it was the home of the God of the universe. Well, the whole point of this earthly temple is that it's a place overlaps with God's heavenly home. The temple is where God lives and rules all creation. But even Solomon, who built the temple, didn't believe that his temple could contain the God of the universe. Yeah, the building was just a symbol that pointed to the fact that all creation is God's temple. And that is actually what the first page of the Bible, Genesis 1, is all about. It says that creation is God's temple. Well, it doesn't need to say it, the whole story shows it. God creates an ordered world out of a dark wasteland by speaking in series of 7 days. Then on the seventh day, God's presence fills creation as He takes up His rest and rule. The tabernacle and later the temple were built and dedicated in a series of 7 speeches and 7 days, after which the priest or king could rest and rule in God's presence. So all of creation is where God intends to dwell. It's like His temple. Now, turn to page Genesis 2 and we get another portrait of creation. This one focuses in on the land, and in the center of the land is a region called Eden, which in Hebrew means delight. And in the middle of the delight, God plants a garden in which God and humanity live together. Now, this 3-part geography, the land, then Eden, then the garden, corresponds to how the biblical authors portray the world. There's the dry land, in the middle of which is Israel, and the center of Israel was the Jerusalem temple. And that's why the temple was modeled after the garden, filled with imagery of gold and flowers. The menorah symbolizes the tree of life, the place where God dwells with His people. In the temple, the Israeli priests and Levites were to work and to keep the temple in God's presence. This is exactly the job description given to humanity in the Garden of Eden. So these humans were the first priests. But instead of ruling with God, they wanted to rule on their own terms, and they are exiled from the garden temple. And like Adam and Eve, Israel's leaders also wanted to rule on their own terms, and they too were exiled. The temple was destroyed, and this left them wondering, did God give up on Israel? Will God bring about a new creation? Well, the biblical prophets anticipated the day when God create a new temple with a new priesthood. That's when God's presence would fill of creation. And when the Israelites returned to the land, they did rebuild the temple. But that temple didn't turn out the way the prophets hoped. In fact, later Israel's prophets said that this temple was a hopelessly corrupt. So we are still waiting for the ultimate temple. And here we come to the story of Jesus. He said that through Him, God's presence and rule was coming to our world in a new way, and presented Himself as a new kind of priest. But Jesus wasn't a priest. He didn't work in the temple. Jesus said that God's presence, His rest and rule, was filling the world through His life, death, and resurrection. Jesus was claiming that He was the true temple, and this new temple would expand out to include all of creation. And it got bigger. After His resurrection, Jesus said that God's presence would come to dwell in and among His followers so that they could become mini temples, communities of people where God rests and rules. This is the Bible's vision of the church, which is described as a temple, not a building, but people. Like when Peter says, "You all are living stones built up as temple of God's Spirit to dwell." So at the end of the biblical story, do we ever get a new physical temple? Well, not exactly. What we see is a renewed cosmic temple, just like in Genesis 1:29. And this new creation doesn't need a building because through Jesus, all creation is now the place where God rests and rules the world with His people. Thank you.